Today we'll be taking a look at two versions of the same game. One for PlayStation, one for Saturn. It'll basically be like a regular review, but with some emphasis on the differences between the two versions. At the end of the video, each version will get its own rating. Mass Destruction was brought out for the PlayStation and Saturn in 1997. A PC version was also released. NMS Software developed the games, and American Softworks Corporation published them. These companies were active during the 1990s, but have disappeared since then. Going into this review, I had no idea what to expect since I've never played Mass Destruction before. The capabilities of both the PS1 and Saturn are similar, but the Saturn was notoriously harder to program for because of a very complex motherboard. Mass Destruction isn't just the title. It's the principle of the whole game. You choose a mission, choose one of 3 tanks, then drive around blowing everything up. The programmers placed emphasis on explosions. It's as if every piece of scenery is packed with dynamite. The destruction of many of these things is optional, but you'll find yourself choosing to destroy more often than not. The objectives of each stage are laid out in a mission briefing. These objectives are never complicated, which is refreshing. They are usually preceded by words like destroy, wipe out, and disrupt. There's an occasional rescue thrown in as well. The game also has many unlisted objectives, which can be completed to unlock bonus missions. You have unlimited ammo for 2 of your weapons, along with the ability to pick up more powerful weapons with limited ammo, like flamethrowers, mines, guided missiles, and mortars. Now let's start comparing the two versions, starting with the graphics. The explosions are the highlight of the game, and on both versions they look spectacular. Just look at the detail in slow motion. No major differences exist in the two games when it comes to the scenery as well. Everything looks like it was just copied from one game to the other. But what separates the two versions is the way the graphics look when things are moving. As you drive around in the PlayStation version, the whole screen is jittery. It almost makes me queasy to look at it. In the Saturn version, everything flows more smoothly. It's kinda hard to show such detail in a YouTube video, but it is noticeable on the television screen. The PlayStation version does have a couple of things better in the graphics department. In the Saturn version, when you're behind a wall or inside a building, you can't see your tank. This creates confusion sometimes. It isn't a problem for the PlayStation though, because objects become transparent when you're behind them. Also, on a smaller note, the text on the mission screen in the PlayStation version is vivid, while the same text in the Saturn looks blurry in comparison. But these two pluses for the PlayStation version don't make up for the jittery graphics I mentioned earlier. I also took time to compare the pre-rendered animations of both games. There was no major difference. It's just the typical stuff you see in games from the mid-1990s. Very outdated by today's standards. The sound effects for both games are pretty much carbon copies of each other. They consist mostly of explosions, with a little bit of screaming mixed in. One little detail I thought was nice is that when explosions happen near a body of water, you can hear the debris splashing down. When it comes to music, both games also sound the same. You heard one of the better songs during the opening. Most of the tunes are nice to listen to, and if you don't like a particular song, you can change it at any time during the mission. When it comes to the controls, I'd have to give the Saturn version the edge. The standard Saturn controller feels slightly more responsive than the PlayStation's D-pad or analog stick. Both versions have auto-fire built in, but the firing rate of the main weapon is much slower in the Saturn version for whatever reason. Unless you have a turbo controller for the Saturn, you'll have to manually fire. With all the things to blow up, your fingers will take a beating after just a couple of missions. When it comes to load times, the Saturn wins hands down. In between missions on the PlayStation version, you have to wait on a loading screen. The Saturn version doesn't even have the loading screen. Instead, it does the loading during the mission briefing. And the loading is so brief, it's done before you even read the text. The Saturn also wins when it comes to saving your game. After every mission in the PlayStation version, if you want to save your progress, you'll be prompted to select the memory card option, confirm your selection, then confirm the overwrite of the previous data. The Saturn version skips all that and just automatically saves with no menus to go through. I had two major complaints that apply to both games. One, there is hardly any challenge. Losing all 1,000 points in your armor meter is a rare occurrence, meaning you hardly ever die. I recommend selecting the hard difficulty from the onset. The second complaint is that the game gets repetitive if you play too many missions in one sitting. Believe it or not, blowing up stuff gets boring after a while. But what the game loses in long-term play, it makes up for in short-term play. Its simplicity means that there's no learning curve, no tutorials, and nothing in the manual that you have to read. You can just bust out the game, pick up the controller, and play successfully, no matter how long it's been since you last played it. The destruction makes for a quick stress reliever after a long day at work. So it was quite a battle between the two mass destruction games. But in my opinion, the Saturn received the better version of the game due to the smoother graphics, better controls, easier saving, and reduced loading times. Will the Saturn always have the best version of multi-platform releases? No. But on this day it came through. The ratings are coming up. Thank you for watching Gaming the Systems.